each node, as well as the value of downstream risks, which is calculated as the sum of the criticality of compromise of all nodes reachable from the current node. After calculating the criticality of compromising all nodes of the attack graph, it's necessary to assess the downward risks of each node. The cyber risk level for the system is defined as a sum of the downward risks calculated for every node, which actually illustrates how vulnerable the system is when it attacks the network from any of the nodes in the system. Having identified the risks of the system in this way, the recommendation received at the stage of selection of the protective measures will most effectively reduce the risks of the system, regardless of where the entry point is. The process of selecting the protective measures relies on the indicator of the risk level of the system. The methodology for selection of the protective measures is to search for such a vulnerability C, which will eliminate the highest risk level of the system. As a result of elimination of the vulnerability C, all arcs of the attack graph connecting any node with the node Y will be deleted through the vulnerability C, unless there is another vulnerability connecting the node X with the node Y. All graph arcs exploiting the same vulnerabilities can be grouped in advance, thereby removing the vulnerability in the one iteration. Using this approach minimizes the risks of compromising the network from any of the system nodes present in the attack graph. Since in a naive execution, it takes a long time to build an attack graph and recalculate the downward risks of all nodes. Optimization and precomputation methods.
Dear presenter, you just have few minutes left to complete your presentation, yeah? Approximately 2-3 minutes.
Okay, and precomputation methods have been developed to reduce the time to recalculate the downward risks of each node. To do this, imagine that each node of the original graph belongs to a subgraph of one of two types, a strongly connected component or a modified n-ary tree. Table presents a comparative analysis of the currently most popular techniques, as well as the technique proposed in this work. The developed methods can be used as an additional model in any security analysis system. They are not subject to any restriction of the appraiser's awareness and are fully subject to automation. The functionality of the system is supported by 4 main modules: data processing module, risk assessment module, countermeasure selection module, and visualization module. The experiments were carried out on the generated attack graphs of various sizes for 2 implementations of the developed techniques. Naive, that is not taking into account optimization based on dividing the initial attack graph into 2 types of subgraph, and full, including optimization. Experiments have shown that the introduced computation optimization measures are really effective. And in the conclusion, the developed comprehensive method based on the attack graph contribute to identifying the most critical vulnerabilities in the smart infrastructures and can minimize the security risks as a result of intruder penetrating the network of the smart infrastructure from any of the system nodes. This method can be applied in the process of developing the recommendations for eliminating the vulnerabilities as a result of penetration testing, as well as an additional module for the security analysis in any existing method. Thank you for your attention.
This was Vasily from Russia. And Dr. Nilesh, any questions, or any participants, any questions?
Yeah, basically, Mr. Vasily. Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Yeah, basically, what sort of applications you are targeting this particular research paper?
Sorry, can you repeat
Hello?
your question?
Yeah, so you are focusing on automatic security management of smart infrastructure, okay,
Yes.
using attack graph and risk analysis, okay. So in one of your slide, you mentioned about optimization of process, I suppose. And go to your last slide. Hello, can you please go to your last slide, last to last slide?
Last slide, open last
Yeah.
slide. Okay.
Okay, just go back. One previous slide, one previous slide.
Okay.
Yeah. So here you are evaluating the efficiency of optimization. Okay. So
Yes.
how exactly you are targeting security of the thing infrastructure and all. Okay. While you are optimizing various graphs. Can you please elaborate this?
In this slide, we can see how the optimized method shows the effectiveness when we compare with unoptimized method. In this slide, we can see that the time to find a protective measure for optimized method is 27 seconds.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now moving ahead to the next presentation, we have mining the Saudi Twitter sphere for expressive support towards women, and the presenter is Iman from Canada. So, is Iman here? Is Iman here or any other presenter from this paper? No? Maybe they will be joining late or something. We will move on to the next presentation, that is by Andrew Hopkins from USA. That is LoRa Mesh Network with Beaglebone Black.
Thank you.
Beaglebone Black, yes. Go ahead, please. You
All
can
right.
share the screen. Yeah.
All right, so this is LoRa Mesh Network with Beaglebone Black. My name is Andrew Hopkins. I'm with Kennesaw State University, and my research mentor is Dr. Chakravarti. A little about me: I'm pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering at Kennesaw. It'll be my second one, as I have one in electronics from Southern Illinois University. Currently, I work over in Delta Airlines in engine maintenance. I lead a team of 14 technicians, and I provide the technical and engineering oversight on all of our PLC systems, our engine test cell systems, particularly on the Rolls-Royce line, pyrometry program, which pyrometry is heat treat equipment, and I'm in charge of our double IoT initiative. So real quick, I want to go over LoRa just to make sure we have a basic understanding of some important parameters with LoRa. So what is it? Well, short for long range. It's a low power, wide area network technology. And it falls all the way down there at the bottom of the OSI model, is that in that physical layer. So LoRa is concerned with sending all those ones and zeros across the airwaves from one point to another. Some real fast facts for you. LoRa is developed by Cyclio, a French startup company. It was purchased by Syntec in 2012, and it is patented. So if you're planning on building a LoRa system, you're going to be using Syntec's chips. But the big advantages are long range, low power, with the main disadvantage being the low data rate. I'll talk about the low data rate in a minute, but if you look at that bottom left table, very, very approximated numbers, but you can see a comparison there between some common Wi-Fi technology. You got Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, short range, a little bit of transmission power, 3G, 4G, getting a bit of a longer range, but a lot of transmission power. LoRa, you can see there, very low transmission power, and it's capable of hitting some very long ranges in its transmissions. There's some other papers on the IEEE Explorer that go into some experiments that were done where the researchers were hitting 10 up to 15 kilometers in city and suburban environments. LoRa does use a chirp spread spectrum modulation to send digital data. The only thing I want to take away from this is that it does this by modulating the data with a series of up chirps and down chirps. That's where it takes the frequency and moves it from a low frequency up to a high frequency centered around that carrier frequency. So some important parameters that would need to be understood for this research is the spread factor, your bandwidth, and your coding rate. So here's a fancy little quad chart I put together. If you look at the top left, we've got the bandwidth, that's your change in frequency during a chirp. Your spread factor is the amount of time that it's going to take to make that change. So you've got 6 different levels there. You've got your spread factor 7 through 12, and each level doubles from the previous one. So 8 is twice as much as 7, 9 is twice as much as 8. So I talked about low data rate there. You can see some time on air calculations for just a 13-byte payload. I mean, that's almost nothing. That's maybe some temperature data or humidity data. You can see with a bandwidth of 125 kilohertz, spread factor 7, 46 milliseconds, not terrible. With a spread factor of 12, we're getting over a second just to send that very small payload. So it's not meant for streaming videos or even really checking your email, but it's perfect for just small sensor data. LoRa does use a 4 error correction. Coding rates 1 through 4. 1 is the least amount of bits dedicated to error correction. Well, coding rate of 4, you've got almost half and half the amount of transmitted bits carrying information compared to error correction. And the only other thing I want to mention is the received signal strength indication, the RSSI. We all know that at the receiver, that's the level that the incoming transmission is at when it hits that receiver. Of course, you got a preamble, you got your payload. Header is optional. You could set up your receiver to know what the payload length is, the CR rate, or you could send the header along with the transmission. So in the experiment and in the paper I wrote, I set up a very basic mesh network using BeagleBone Black and an RYLR 896 LoRa transceiver. If you're not familiar with the BeagleBone, it is a single board Linux computer. It's got 1 gigahertz processor and half a gig of RAM. It's got the Cloud9 IDE on it, so you can code in C++ or Python or JavaScript. Here's the LoRa transceiver there. It covers both the European and the United States free license range. United States, we use 915 megahertz, and over in Europe, I believe it's 868 megahertz. Unfortunately, if you're in Asia, you'll have to find a different module because it does not hit that 433 megahertz. And you can see there sitting next to my TI-36 calculator, very small components to make this all happen. So in my mesh network, I had 3 nodes. I called them nodes 2, 3, 4. Little silly, I know. With the 896, I set the network ID to number 1. So when you transmit, you want to transmit to network ID number 1, so it transmits to all the nodes on the network. So it makes a little bit more sense if I kept the nodes calling node 2, node 3, node 4, because that corresponded to address 2, address 3, address 4. So we had 3 nodes. Upon power up, each node is going to listen for other transmitting nodes on the network. And it's going to sit there and it's going to learn the transmission intervals of the other nodes. And then after it learns those transmission intervals, it will then begin transmitting at an interval that avoids interfering with the other nodes that are on that network. So during my experiment, I set up to run through 18 different combinations of parameters. So I used 3 different spread factors, 3 different bandwidths, 2 different coding rates, and the output power is set to 0 dBm. However, if a node had to retransmit a message, it was going to use 15 dBm. And this was done because if a node identified that it needed to retransmit a message, obviously it needed to make sure it's getting it with most power because we want to minimize the amount of messages being retransmitted. So node 3 was set up as the retransmission node. So it would retransmit messages from either node 2 or 4 if that RSSI, that received signal strength indication, was below -70 dBm. This would be a red flag to node 3 to say, hey, that message may not have gotten to the corresponding node, so I need to retransmit it to help it get there. The payload was very small, 18 bytes. Again, this is maybe a timestamp and some temperature data, or timestamp and humidity data. Node 2 was powered on first, followed by node 3, followed by node 4. So when node 2 and 3 were both on, when node 4 came online, it would sit there and initially just listen to nodes 2 and 3 and learn their transmission intervals. I ran each parameter for at least an hour with transmission intervals at a static set of about 1 minute. So I've got plenty of data. All in all, there's over 100 messages received from each parameter type. And you can see the location where I set it up there is on the left. This is in a suburban house. Node 2 is upstairs. Node 3 was on the middle floor, and Node 4 is down in the basement. On the right, you can see the setup with the BeagleBone LoRa transceiver, as well as power supply and some circuit protection there. So some results that I saw, first with the LoRa parameters there at the top left. I just want to bring that there for your reference. The 3 spread factors, the 3 bandwidths, and the 2 coding rates. Here's the percentage of messages received over all messages transmitted for each parameter. So now your x-axis, if you look at that, kind of cock your head to the left a little bit, your numbers there are spread factor, bandwidth, and coding rate. So on the bar on the far left, we got 12.51. That means a spread factor of 12, a bandwidth of 5, and a coding rate of 1. And that performed the best right there with about 95% messages received from messages transmitted. So about 5% of messages were being lost either through some sort of interference or either just having the incorrect number of bits on the receiving end. And I also went through and calculated the delay that I was seeing with the different transmission types. So you can see the best performing parameter combination, that 12.51, actually had a delay of about 4 seconds from when the transmission left the transmitter to when it got to the receiver. You can see if the spread factor was brought down or the bandwidth was increased, I would get a little better delay there in those transmissions. There are more graphs, and I look at all the messages received at each node individually in the paper with the same title, LoRa Mesh Network with BeagleBone Black.
Dear presenter, you just have 2-3 minutes left.
Okay, good. I'm hauling right into the station here. So we got conclusions. Spread factor 12 with a bandwidth of 41.7 kilohertz was the best. And some possible applications of this. So if you're wanting to run a LoRa transmitter off of a battery, this might help you maximize your energy efficiency by having that transmitter learn the transmission intervals and then go to sleep in between those transmissions. This also might help minimize interference between multiple LoRa devices. And it's possible that this may also minimize your number of gateway devices. I didn't really talk a whole lot about gateway devices, but at some point you want to take that low data rate and turn it into that fast TCP IP that we all know and love, and really start sending that information moving a lot faster. You do that through a gateway device. But if you're capable of extending your range of your LoRa devices, maybe in your particular situation, you can avoid having more than a minimal amount of gateway devices. And if this is something that really excites you, you can check out all the raw data as well as the Python code that's all available there on my GitHub. And what next? I'll be working on interfacing the BeagleBone with some high accuracy industrial grade transmitters, such as the Rotronics HF5. And I'll be setting up a LoRa mesh network to monitor some environmental conditions of critical areas, such as clean rooms and dimensional inspection and calibration laboratories. I'll be doing this mainly with a focus on maximizing the number of devices on the air, maximizing network reliability, and optimizing those transmission intervals. Here's some image references for you there. And that's it for me. There's some email addresses if you want to get a hold of me. There's Dr. Chakravarty's email address. And again, there's my GitHub link. Again, if you want to take a look at the data yourself or look at the Python code. Is there any questions?
Okay, so anybody is having any question from the participants? Okay, so can we proceed further for the next presentation?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And it was a very nice presentation. Great to hear from you back. And it's we are moving ahead with the next presentation, and I hope that the second presenter, Iman, has already joined from Canada, but we will take him just at the end of the session. So moving on to the fourth presentation, I invite Elizabeth. And I'm just unmuting. You are just unmuted, Elizabeth. And you can.
You hear me?
Yeah, you can share your presentation. Over to you.
Which on my screen? Can you see the screen?
Wait, you are fine. You can go ahead. All the best.
Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. And today I'm going to give a presentation about comorbidities in patients with COVID-19 case study Baja California using ANN. So let's move that. Okay, there is the agenda. And first I'd like to tell about introduction. According to the World Health Organization, the current pandemic due to the disease called COVID-19 has caused more than 450,000 deaths worldwide. According to various studies, such as the one carried out in the city of Wuhan, China, the majority of patients who have died from COVID-19 have been found to have at least one other underlying condition. In our country, for approximately 20 years, there has been a increase in the number of deaths due to morbidity, chronic non-communicable disease, and externally caused disease. Okay, now I'd like to move on the theoretical framework. And first, I'd like to talk about COVID-19. Coronaviruses are an extensive family of viruses that can cause disease in both animals and humans. In humans, it has been known so far that they can cause respiratory infection ranging from common cold to more serious illness such as Middle East respiratory syndrome called MERS and severe acute respiratory syndrome called SARS, with a mortality rate of 37% and 10% respectively. According to Perez Manuel, COVID-19 is caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2. Its shape is round or oval and often polymorphic. It has a diameter of 60 to 140 nanometers. The spike protein that is found on the virus surface and forms a road-shaped structure. Second, I'd like to talk about COVID-19 clinical phenotype. The main initial symptoms of COVID-19 include fever, cough, fatigue, muscle pain, and dyspnea. Some patients show atypical symptoms, such as diarrhea and vomiting. Sudden loss of smell and taste have also been observed. In several cases, it is caused by pneumonia, acute respiratory distress syndrome, sepsis, and septic shock. In the same way, there are people who can be non-symptomatic. Here I'd like to talk about comorbidities. According to Rosas Oscar et al., the term comorbidity was introduced into medicine by Alban Feinstein in 1970 when he observed that errors in classifying and analyzing comorbidity had led to many difficulties in the results in medical studies. Therefore, he defined comorbidity as the existence of a different additional clinical entity and occurs during the clinical course of a patient with an indexed disease under study. According to studies introduced in Wuhan, China, the clinical phenotype was confused by the fact that 25.2% of patients had at least one other underlying medical condition. The high mortality rate in this region was due to more to people with comorbid condition. Then I'd like to talk about mortality rate in Mexico. According to information provided by the information system of the Secretaría de Salud, Ministry of Health, in 2080, the main pathology related to deaths in the country were heart disease, other specific causes, diabetes mellitus, malignant tumors, and liver disease. In the state of Baja California, in 2018, the main pathology related to death were heart disease, malignant tumors, and diabetes mellitus, among others more. 41.22% of deaths occur in people older than 65 years old, and 31.62% in people 45 to 64 years old, and 11.07% in people 25 to 44 years old. Then the methodology that we followed was CRISDM methodology. The CRISDM methodology from the chronic growth industry standard process for data mining is usually a very accepted guide in research lines that have data mining oriented works. The model life cycle consists in 6 phases: exploratory, descriptive, relational, explanatory, predictive, and application. Then we use neural network. And neural network, or also called artificial neural network, are processing algorithms that allow us to recognize patterns in data and are inspired by the functionality of biological neural networks. A neural network is made up of processing units called neurons distributed in different layers connected to each another by a series of weights that establish the relationship between them. In general, neural networks have shown a classification capacity equal to a greater than statistical techniques, with the advantage that they can be used independently of complex with a theoretical assumption regards these things. And the result obtained, we start with the collection of data. The database that has been used for this case study belongs to the open data published federal government portal by the General Director of Epidemiology. Then, and the next step, all the record of other entities in the country were discarded, and only those that belongs to a resident of Baja California that were also treated at medical center in the region were preserved. Only the following data was kept: was sex, municipality, the date of death, age, and those variables referring to morbidities. The result, confirmed cases of COVID-19, ACU, if they need to enter an intensive care unit. In addition, from the variable of the date of death, another variable was generated called disease, where it has a condition of shower true or yes in case the patient record has a death, and shows true or no in case the death date is not registered for the patient. Then we continue with the data preparation. We proceed to import the resulting database and to the software where the neural network model will be put. The corresponding typing of each variables were performed. All variables will be input variables and their respective categorical values were assigned. Once the data was prepared, the construction of the multi-layer perceptron model began. Then for model creation, for this model, a random partition of the data was carried out, where the 7% of the data was assigned for neural network training and the remaining 30% for test. The result, neural network had 37 inputs, a hidden layer, and 2 outputs that correspond to the yes or no values of the variable to be predicted. In this case, this is it. According to the result obtained, a predictive accuracy percentage of 82% was obtained and 18% of error. According to the data obtained in the table of importance of the independent variables shown in the table, we noted that the variables of factor with the greatest weight to define whether a person diagnosed with COVID-19 may die or not are mainly age, with the importance to 22.7%. Pneumonia followed with a 16.2%, and chronic renal failure with a 11.2%. In conclusion, the report showed the main characteristics and pathology that can lead the COVID-19 patient to have a greater completion or even have other fatal outcome. The mortality rate in Baja California and the rest of the country is increasing every year and has morbidities and chronic non-communicable disease as the main causes of death. And furthermore, according to our predictive analysis, the most important variable is the age of the patient. Remembering the deaths registered during the year 2080, they tell us that 51.22% of this occurring in people over 65 years old. According
Dear
to the
presenter, you just have 2 minutes left.
Okay. According to the result, it can say that there is a dark panorama for the population, and there is very likely that the health services may be saturated when attending to so many patients affected with a complication and requiring ever intensive care. It is for the reason that it's hoped that this study may be useful for the health sector to see areas of opportunity and strategic prevention and healthcare programs, or to disseminate exciting campaigns in order to reduce rates of mortality from comorbidities or chronic non-communicable disease. That is the reference. And if you have any question, I'll be glad to answer in my email. That is my email. And it's that. Thank you very much.
So any of the question from the participants? So Elizabeth, it was a nice presentation, but I'd like to know, okay, where is the use of ANN, artificial neural networks, in this paper? Because you have presented some sort of case studies, okay, but how exactly you have implemented ANN into this case study, and how exactly you have populated the results? Hello, are you getting my point, Elizabeth?
Excuse me, I don't have a great English skill. Can you write, please, the question?
Okay.
She is not directly able to understand complete English, right?
Okay.
That is the issue. Anyways, if you have any queries, you can just put it on the chat board, sir.
Okay.
You can
Fine.
discuss it.
Fine.
And
Yes,
I think we should move over to the next presentation. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. We will move ahead with the next presentation, and for that I will invite Hari Das from India. The presentation is tomato leaf disease 1.
Yes, yes, sir.
So,
Yes.
Hari Das, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, perfect. You can share your screen.
Okay, sir.
Go ahead, please.
So, is it visible? Hello? Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Oh, so myself, Haridas Garde. So, good evening, the Modi sir, Joshi sir, and the other participant. So, my topic is tomato leaf disease diagnosis and severity measurement. So, now this is the agenda for me. First one is the introduction. Second is tomato leaf data set, uh, methodologies, result and discussion, conclusion followed by references. So I just made this the small presentation as we have very limited time. Now the introduction. So actually I am working on the tomato leaf disease. So in India, so that Indian economy is based on the agriculture, and the many the agriculture's yields are contributing the Indian economy. So one of the major the crop is that is the tomato. Now actually the area where I am living, that area is called as Khandesh. So here that main crop is the tomato. So whatever I observe, so that is what the farmers they identify that disease from that past experience, or they can go on the internet and they search the images or similar kind of diseases. And the last one is they can the contact to the experts, and then after that they apply some remedies. But in this case they are unable to find out the exact disease and they waste much of the time. So that was the traditional method. That is the traditional method the many the farmers are using, and in many cases the farmers needs that good educational knowledge. But the normally in India the farmers are not that much educated. So that is the main problem. That's why I just started work on this. Now, when we just come to the tomato leaf disease, so actually that whatever the temperature required for this is the minus sorry 21 to minus 23, that is the ideal temperature. But the commercially we the use that is like 18 to 27 degrees Celsius temperature. So that because of this the lots of environmental conditions, so many the fungus, virus or bacteria, these attacks on the tomato leaf. So if you see here, these are the some of the examples I just given here. So when any bacteria, virus or the other the attacks on the leaves, so whatever the color of that leaves or that morphology that gets changes. So you can see in this that color has been changed or that morphology is get been changed. So now the data set which I got, that is from the plant village. So from there I got the database. So around 3,000 images I just analyzed, and that these images I just categorized into the 10 classes. Now here these are the 10 classes, and whichever is the last one, that is the healthy leaf. But the apart from this last one, these 9 classes are there for the disease. So this data set I just got it from the uh, plant village. Now this is the methodology. This is a very the short methodology I just given here. So first one is the plant village data set, image reprocessing, actually reprocessing, segmentation of disease area, feature extraction, leaf disease classification, and whatever is the focus I'm giving, that is on the disease severity measurement. So first one is the pre-processing. Actually, I have just resized all the 3,000 images to 64 by 64, and I have just used that median filter to remove the noise in this first step. And after this, the whatever is the noise image that we can give to the segmentation. Now, second one is the segmentation here. So color based segmentation using thresholding I have just used here, and whatever the threshold minimum and maximum threshold which I consider here, that is for the color image at 5, 58 and 30. Actually these thresholds I have just used to uh, segment that yellow and brown the color from that leaf, because when that plant leaf get affected from the viruses or disease or any other the bacteria, so that color get changed to the like yellow or the brown. So these thresholds I just use for the segmentation. Now these are the feature extraction methods I have used. These 9 feature extraction methods I have just used here, and we can they discuss these in the results. What is the result of these with respect to the classification? So these 9 methods I have used for the feature extraction. So color mean pixel value, color movement, as feature extraction using operator, Gabor feature extraction, histogram, GLM, HAR, HOG, and LBP. So all these 9 methods I have just used for the feature extraction. And these are the classification, the algorithms. First one is the LDA, KNN, SVM, Navy Bayes, and the decision tree. So these 5 algorithms I have just used for the classification. Now next, this is the mean the severity measurements. What I did, so here I just use this formula. First, I just converted that HSV image in the segmentation. I first converted that image to the HSV. Now here, and this part I just converted that HSV image to the grayscale. And here I just use this formula. So area of defected region into hunted by the complete region, area of complete region. So using this, I just calculated the percentage and I just compare all this. So this was the about the methodology. Now next is the result and discussion. If you see here, so whatever the 3000 images I divided into the 9 classes, and the 9 classes, I just for the 9 classes I just calculated that severity measurement in percentage. So for the first one you can see, so this is very the small area which is get affected, and after segmentation we just got this area and somewhere else. So that's why that percentage I just calculated in this one, and here that's very less area, so the percentage is very less. Now, and the other things you can see here, and the third the image early blight, so that area is around the 23%. So if you see this, when a segment, so that percentage is 23%, and if you see that first one, so here the 6%, because that minimum area is get affected. So in this way, I just calculated the area for the all 9 classes. So these are the percentage for the all 9 classes. And now this is the leaf. This is diagnosis. This is the accuracy table for tomato leaf. This is diagnosis. If you see here, so accuracy is of SVM is better than other ones. Like if you see the only for the color movement and GLCM, that accuracy is here in the LDA. So otherwise for all SVM, so that accuracy is better than the other algorithms for these 9 classifications, sorry, feature extraction methods. And the next one, this is the graphical representation of this. If you see, so this one hog and the SVM is having the better performance here. So other with respect to others, so that this one is having the better performance. Now this is the accuracy for the tomato leaf. This is, so now here again, so that 1 minute. This is the F score for the tomato leaf. This is diagnosis. Now here you can see the comparison I just shown here, that for card, like this is a decision tree. So here for this, that the measurement is good, other than for the other it is not that much, but here in LDA and the LBP, so these one are somewhat different. And same thing for the precision also. So in precision it is the not the same in SVM or other, it is the distributed. 1 minute. Precision. Now this is the recall. So now in recall also we can see that SVM is better than the other one. So all these the figure that shows that SVM is the better than the other algorithms. Now this is the conclusion. So in this research, we have studied the automatic disease detection and classification of tomato leaf disease images. So the different tomato leaf disease images from the plant village data set were used for the experiments, and the images are classified into 10 different diseases. So during the experimentation, we have performed the segmentation of the leaf disease area using color-based thresholding techniques on the HSV image. So the severity measurement is done using the percentage calculation of the disease area with the leaf area, and the tomato leaf disease diagnosis is performed using the classification approach. So that last one is the main conclusion. Different feature extraction and classification approaches were evaluated, and after performance evaluation, we concluded that SVM classification with hog feature gives the better result. So this is the conclusion for this. Sorry. Actually, this is, and these are my references. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
So any question from the participants? Okay, so we can proceed further for the next presentation.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We are moving ahead with the next presentation, and
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you.
the next presenter is, I think, Kiran Raj. Is Kiran Raj here? No? Okay, then we are taking that one left out presentation from that Iman, mining the Saudi Twitter sphere for expressive support towards women. Is the presenter here? I think both of them are not here, so it's time for me to wind up this session, and I thank all the presenters for presenting their valuable contribution to this conference. I thank Dr. Nilesh Modi for chairing this session and sparing his valuable times, because it is very difficult on a digital screen to sit for continuously, say, 90 minutes and see the presentations, then comment on it, and then review those. And so it's really difficult, but it would have been physical, it is much easier. So I believe that for chairs that things have become difficult, but still I wish him all the very best and congratulate him on chairing, and we look forward to your support in future as well, sir. And I request Deepika to kindly share a token of appreciation to Dr. Nilesh Modi. She will be sharing in a short while of time. And till that time, my thanks are also due to all the presenters who have taken their lot of pain. I understand that cycle time of a paper for a IEEE is approximately 6 to 7 months. Once you submit the paper, 3 to 4 months before the conference, then it gets reviewed. Then the review comments come, decision comes, then you revise your paper, resubmit it, sign the copyright, then finally present your paper, and then the paper is published. So already 3 to 4 months are over, and I think another more 2.5 months would be taken by IEEE to finally make your paper online. In the meanwhile, if we will have any queries or IEEE have any content issues or copyright issues, we will just let you know. All the e-copyrights of IEEE have been sent, and or it is in process. Maybe you will receive in 1 or 2 days if you have not received yet, but many of them have already been received. Uh, the last part is that you will also be able to receive all the certificates of presentation and your payment receipt which we have done, as well as a thank you letter from our organization. You will just receive it maybe in 30-40 minutes after the session is over. So you can have a good time, a safe time till the time the conference publication is online. We will be connected through mail. And if you have any queries, please feel free to drop me a mail. I am just sharing my mail ID to everyone in this meeting. If you do not get a response directly from support@worlds4.org. So I will be happy to assist you in any possible way. I've shared my mail ID. And once again, thank you very much and look forward to your support and conferences. Once again, I say that I believe that COVID-19 is soon going to be a thing of past. Also, it is being surging in various countries, but I think as soon as the time will pass, we will again be in the same mode. And with our smiling faces, again, we will be meeting for our future conferences in 2021. Till that time, stay safe, take care, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Amit Joshi, for inviting me to chair this session, and GR Foundation and entire the organizing committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.